This meeting is being recorded so that we can share it later. And I want to also remind you that 2 weeks from today, we'll hear from Chris Schiller, who's a recent PhD in Earth Sciences, about his research understanding the role of hydrothermal activity in shaping the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And you'll see an ad that goes out for that. But let me introduce today's rough cut speaker, who we're very excited to hear from. That's Badamgarav Dovchin, who is working on an interdisciplinary individual PhD through the Department of Land Resources and Environmental Sciences here at Montana State. Badma has a pretty distinguished and interdisciplinary background. She received a BA in education and a master's in cognitive linguistics from the University of Humanities of Mongolia. Went on to receive a master's degree in ecology from the National University of Mongolia, and also holds a master's degree in science, environmental science from Montana State, which was supported by a Fulbright scholarship. She worked for many years as a community development coordinator with Bioregions International, and prior to that, she has extensive experience as a tour guide working around Montana. Her current research focuses, Mongolia. Her current research focuses on soil quality issues, local stakeholder participation, and environmental decision making. And we're excited to hear more about that today. So Badma is sharing her screen, and what we'll do is she's got a presentation prepared, and then we can do an open questions and answers after that. So thank you so much for being here, Badma.
Thank you, Julia, for introductions, and thanks for everyone to be here and spending your time with me. So today I am going to be talking about the ecosystem services and its flow applications in Montana and Mongolia in 2 case studies. So first of all, I would like to thank my doctoral committee and also RAFCOT IOE Institute and Julia. So today's talk is gonna consist of, first we'd like to introduce a little bit about Mongolia, and then I'll talk about the traditional ecological knowledge and Western ecological knowledge. Let me move this. And then I'll introduce the idea of ecosystem services and ecosystem services flow, where it came from and what it is, and then how we can integrate ecosystem service and ecosystem service flow model into traditional ecological knowledge system and Western ecological knowledge system. And then we'll look at the 2 case studies, that is the recreational fishing in Rocky Mountains and recreational fishing in Sayan Mountains, Mongolia. So these are quite similar biological, geological wise, that's why I wanted to compare. And then, is the ecosystem service flows a better way to address sustainability is the question that I would like to pose at the end of the talk. So let's begin. So Rocky Mountains and Sayan Mountain regions are located almost exactly on 2 sides of the world and in a really similar latitude. So obviously Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming is in the region. On the other side, the northern Mongolian pocket that sticks into Siberia is where the Sayan Mountain range falls. So since you know Montana well, I would just introduce Mongolia, the Sayan Mountain side. So obviously Mongolia is in between Russia and China. The gray area on the map is the Sayan Mountain region, and we are going to be focusing on the northern pocket, which is here. And this place, the green parts are special protected area or park. So this park consists of 3 protected areas, and the white area is the valley bottom, and the blue is obviously a lake that is in the northern Mongolia. So a little bit of statistics about Mongolia. I mean, the Darkhad Valley, the name of the valley is Darkhad, and the elevation is about 1,500 to 3,200 meters. Area-wise, the valley bottom is about 1 million hectare, and the protected areas, the green parts, are 1.6 million hectare, which all together, this area is about the size of the state of Vermont, to be comparison. And then the park area itself is about twice the size of Yellowstone National Park. And the population in this region of Mongolia is about 11,000. And they have about 850,000 animals, livestock, by the statistics of 2019. And it just cuts into about a 1/2 person per square kilometer. And to compare it with Montana, it's about 2.7 people per square kilometer here. So it's quite sparsely populated. And most of the people live in towns as like teachers and doctors, and the rest of them are herders who are living in and out of the park zone and also the buffer zone, the valley bottom. And there are about 32 livestock in square kilometer, which is quite dense compared to people. And then biologically, it's quite diverse for this kind of region and climate and everything. We have about 219 species of birds, and it's been added recently. And we have 31 species of mammals. That includes snow leopards and rare species like musk deer and moose and brown bear. And then plant species, they have about 500 plant species, and it's counting. And most of the plant species that lives in this area is the medicinal plants and very, very culturally significant plants. So it's very important regionally and also locally. So I'm going to show you a few images so you could have some visual understanding about the valley. So this is a photo taken from one of the ridges. It looks really similar to Gallatin Valley to me, and the mountains are quite Bridger looking mountains. And here are some of the other pictures, and we have 4 seasons. That the centigrade wise, it's -50, so it's quite cold. In the summer, it's about +30 centigrade. And then we have huge rivers that people fish, and we have mostly large forest and bald mountains and boulders. And since the terrain is bad, we don't have much infrastructure, so rides in the Darkhad would be mostly horses or reindeers. Reindeers are the best ride, by the way. But when you take photo from the top of the reindeer, your photos are always framed in a little hairy velvets, like the picture on the right below. So from here, we could now look into the traditional ecological knowledge system and Western ecological knowledge system and how it evolved. So say the x-axis is the global acceptance rate. Let me move this away. And then humans always had a desire to know more about what's around them. And if we say y-axis is time, we have the desire to know about the nature-driven knowledge that developed into place-based knowledge, and then it turned into traditional ecological knowledge. But if you pay attention to the x-axis, the global acceptance rate, it stayed quite place-based, it's in a small region. But it's quite detailed knowledge that's been observed and accumulated over time. For the Western knowledge, obviously they also started from the desire to know more about nature, and then it turned into religious institutes, and then the religious institutes developed the science, and then turned into today's highly specialized scientific research that you can apply globally, and it's accepted, and it's quite applicable to the bigger scale. So this is how we are looking at the traditional vs. Western ecological knowledge. And now we'll look into ecosystem services and its flow. So ecosystem services is the idea that is defined by the bunch of economists at the beginning of 2000s. Actually, it's earlier. So the idea was just to put the dollar sign on the ecosystem services and goods that people are benefiting from. And then if you put that dollar sign or the monetary value, it would be easier to manage. And it was renovation. It was important idea, and it developed from there. And the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment was one of the biggest projects that actually utilized it. Now it's being developed into a bigger interdisciplinary field. But the classic, basic classification of the ecosystem services consists of intermediate service and final service. So the intermediate services consists of the structure and the elements that maintain ecosystem services. So when you have the structure, the function works, and the functions produce the final services that are provisioning, which is raw materials, food, water, fiber, you name it, and then regulating services, that's buffering, disturbance, or waste processing. And the final classification of the services is cultural service. And this is the one that is not necessarily the monetary value, it's mostly aesthetics or the spiritual or educational or recreational purposes. So when we talk about the ecosystem services and its values, it's not only the monetary service or monetary values, it's also the values of the spiritual and another. So the flow of the ecosystem service is the advanced version of this idea of ecosystem services, because when you are trying to account the ecosystem services and try to manage the environment in terms of ecosystem service that it provides, we need to look into how it's flowing. So the flow is defined by Villamanga et al. It's the ecosystem service flows from where it's produced to where it's consumed. So it has this cycle, and we need to look into the flow of it to manage it. So when we classify it, like basically there's so many classifications, but this one is the basic classification. And the first one is traded goods. And second classification of the flow is species migration and dispersal. And then the third one is passive biophysical flow, like water or wind or whatever. And then information flow is the big one that's coming in, and it's a quite important thing to consider, especially in 21st century with the data flow and everything. It's all another topic. So when we look into the conceptual models of ecosystem services flow, there are, like I said, there are many classifications, many flow models that people are using, but here I just wanted to use Jones et al.'s flow. So first, there should be a natural capital, that is all the soil, water, whatever it provides from the nature. And then second is the human-derived capital. It should be the one that the social, cultural, the financial, the whatever the human side provides. And then we need to have the users on the other side. And when you have those, human and natural capital is interacting with the user side of it or the demand side of it, the interaction turns into the next thing, which is the second input of human capital is on this side, which is mostly technology or like the infrastructure or whatever it provides to make the ecosystem service available. And then finally it turns into realized ecosystem service or its quantifiable service. So we need to pay attention that there are two types of human capital that's in the process on this flow model. So keeping that in mind, we now will look into ecosystem service and ecosystem service flow, integration into the traditional ecological knowledge system or the Western ecological knowledge system. So first, ecosystem service flow and what it means to different cultures is very important to address. So any phenomena, including ecosystem service, has to go over the cultural or linguistic barriers when it's applied in different parts of the world or different cultures, obviously. And since I was a linguist, I really wanted to look into that. And again, like when I do my research in my field, I work with Mongolians, but I bring this Western ecological knowledge to compare. So when you say ecosystem services, Mongolians are like, what do you mean? Ecosystem is your mother. Your mother is not your servant. So you cannot really say ecosystem services. So again, the interpretation is important and translations. So you need to ask and interpret and compare and address the difference in the common things in between the cultures when you start working or applying different ideas like this. Oh, sorry. And then one thing that is the common thing is the value that ecosystem services holds to any community that you're working. So it's not only the monetary value, like I said before, it has to be the cultural, the epistemological, or the spiritual value. That is the one that unites it. So when we compare the value that the nature holds to these two different places that I'm talking, I have to look into the view of conservation in nature that evolved in the last century. So in 1960s to 1970s, according to Mays et al., the conservation view was the nature for itself. That was the most important thing, the theme of the era. And then it evolved into, from 1980s to 1990s, nature despite the people. And then from 2000 to 2005, it became nature for people. And then from 2000 to 2000, like now, present, people in nature all need help. On the other side, before 1920s, Mongolia was totally nomadic country. So nature is the ruler. We live under the power of nature. We fit into the nature, not nature fits to us. So this was the idea. And during the communist time, or the 70 years of communism building with Russians from 1921 until 1990, it was nature is there to be used. You know, Mongolia started agriculture, planting and using plants like most other countries do. And then after the perestroika or the communism collapse from 1990s to 2010, Mongolia went under really big transition of becoming a free market economy, democratic country. And during that time, there was no support at all. The Russian support cut off. We had the shock therapy of the economy. So people were just out there for the nature to survive. They harvested, they hunted, they herd their animals. And during that time was the overexploitation or the hurt of the environment happened. And after 2010, when Mongolia started establishing everything really nicely with the law and some international aids and you know, that includes USAID and World Health Organization and everything, we started to see the nature needs help because it was overused. It was abused during that 20 years of the not lawful area or the survival. So this is the journey that two locations went through. So the two cultures see the ecosystem service in different ways. So on Montana side, I would say it's more anthropocentric or human-centric. So the definition of ecosystem service, beginning from it, the benefit that human receives from the ecosystem is ecosystem service. So human is the important user, receiver, and ecosystem service is counted or realized if there's humans to receive. And then ecosystem service has source and sink, which is connected by the structure, and then that makes the flow available. On the other side, Mongolians see the ecosystem service as a gift of land that comes with the reciprocal responsibility. So Mother Nature gives the gift, but human is not the only thing that benefits. Obviously, every other beings are taken as the same as human being in the worldview of Mongolians. So to benefit the flow, you need to learn how to swim, which is build the reciprocal relationship with the Mother Nature. That is the way that flow happens in the perceptions of Mongolians. So on the flow system, if you see the details, ecosystem service is realized if there's human beings. Again, it's the human-centric view of seeing things. And it's delivered by the infrastructure. And the infrastructure is like the system of laws. And on Mongolia side, ecosystem service is there regardless of human. And then the flow happens through the relationship. If you build a relationship with your land, you receive the ecosystem services with any other beings. And an infrastructure of the service flow is on Montana side. You guys have really nice law and regulations, and obviously there need to be ability to buy that service or the value that this service holds for you. On the concrete structure side, ecosystem structure is obviously there. You have beautiful mountains and everything that it needs to be. And then plus you have the physical infrastructure of roads or the, the docks for the boats and everything. Compared to Mongolia, we are establishing it, and again, it's about 100 years behind the Montana, but the abstract structure, the government law and regulations are coming, but the most important thing is the relationship, the land and spirits and communities that you have with is the most important stuff. And then a concrete structure on the side, obviously we do have the ecosystem structure, but the physical structure is not much there. Like I showed you the rights, you only have like dirt road or the horses or four-wheel Russian army jeeps that you can drive only. Now we could look at the cases. So in Montana side, obviously, ecosystem service is not a new idea here, and it's being, there are some projects being initiated, and for example, wetland management initiatives that Bill and his colleagues are working, and there are agencies, and there are some, people and specialists to work in using ecosystem service and applying it. And then also you guys have the respective laws and regulations that would assist the ecosystem service flow idea here. And then if you look into like specific examples of the recreational fishing, this lady wants to fish, right? So we need to have fish first, which is the nature capital. And an opportunity to go fishing is the first type of human capital that we need in the equation. And then with those, she would go out and buy fishing gear and then buy licenses, which is the second human capital. And finally, she can fish, with all those capitals engaged together. So here on this flow model, the intermediate service or the fixed density is there, which is the natural capital. The human capital, the opportunity to fish, is there, and that makes the recreational fishing available. Then it crosses the production boundary. Then that is when we have the second injection of the human capital, which is flies and rods and gears, hotels, cars, whatever she needs, and willingness to pay. And then the benefit of love fishing comes out, and it crosses back the production boundary, turns into cumulative pressure. As many people start fishing, the pressure builds up, and this has to pressurize the policy. And then from there, they decide, do we need more fish or do we need more fishermen? So this is the cycle that we're looking at when we look at this ecosystem services. On Mongolia side, we have ecosystem service flow tool, like in the traditional knowledge, it's this cycle, it's the relationship, but we do not have it at the decision-making level yet, which I am trying to introduce, and my work is initiating those things. But there are things to consider. Private livestock on public land is the biggest pre-existing condition in Mongolia. And that leads to mismatched, non-inclusive assessment management tools because the stakeholders like herders use traditional ecological knowledge that is mostly production and reciprocity based. So they need to produce to survive, and also they need to build the reciprocity with the land or the relationship. The national government uses the Western ecological knowledge because they work with all these international organizations. It needs to be widely applicable. And the purpose is mostly production, like they need to produce more wealth by the agriculture. On the other hand, special protected area, especially in Darhat Valley, it's a new one, it's about 7-8 years old. And they use Western ecological knowledge system, but it's a conservation-based system. It's like everything has to be conserved. And these three types of users, stakeholders, and systems are mismatching and clashing. And the only thing that we could tie these three is the ecosystem service flow model in my mind. That's why I'm applying it. So the example of ecosystem service in Mongolia, I put it in this structure. So first we need biophysical diversity. Then that makes the epistemological or cultural diversity. With those two layers, the management and policy diversity is available. And then finally, the beneficiaries are diverse. If you have these layers are diverse, then the tip of the iceberg is sustainable flow of ecosystem services. So the biophysical diversity is natural capital. These two layers are human capital. For one, the first version and second version of the human capital. And then the cumulative pressure distribution will be even when you have a diverse users. And then that is finally the realized ecosystem services. So keeping that in mind, the big fishing rivers that is up in the north, which is called Dilga River. On the map, again, I would like to show you where the river falls. So that red is river. Obviously, the part that falls inside the park is the area that the herders are not being able to use. Instead, we have the sports fishers who are coming and catching these huge taimans, which is freshwater salmon that reaches up to about 2 meters. And it's a very, very sexy thing for the fly fishermen or the sports fishermen. And here's an image of my field assistant of 2016, I think. He got his own taiman and I got my own trout. So everybody has their own type of fishing happening. And the unfortunate thing is this pasture behind this man and behind us is not available for herders because this ecosystem service of fly fishing or the sports fishing weighs more than the others. So when it is replaced on the triangle that we've seen, we have biophysical diversity in the Darhat Valley, Dilgar River, but it's degrading because of all the exploitations and things happened. But we do have the epistemological or cultural diversity, which is herders, we have scientists, we have tourists, we have decision makers, we have everybody coexisting. But when it comes to the management and policy diversity, Western ecological system is the only system that is in use so far. And then that propagates into the beneficiary diversity, and it just, sport fishers are the only users of this river area during the fishing season. And also, because of the strict rules of the national park that they have, most of the pastures are not available to herders anymore like it used to be. So the sustainable flow of ecosystem service in the Darhat Valley, in the river, we don't have it anymore, we would say, because all these layers are having some problems because it's not diverse. So it's just, to show you where we have the problems. And then when you look into the world scale of ecosystem service flow, you could see the global south ecosystem services are piled on global north. And it's really interesting. The person who presented was Martha Berbez, and she's a professor at Arizona State University. And I really would like to see how it looks on the Asian side of it. It would be interesting. So now, the final question that I would like to impose to you and also to myself is the ecosystem service. Is it a better way to address sustainability? In my mind, yes, I think, because sustainability would reach when we look into the holistic way, but there are things to address, like we need to look into the blind spot of ecosystem services flow models. There are, depending on where you are, depending on what you're doing, what's the goal or ecosystem service that is valued, there might be blind spots. And the Western ecological science knowledge, Western ecological knowledge, its precision would help to see the blind spots. And connecting the layers of the pyramids that we've just looked at would also really help. And that would use the traditional ecological knowledge, the holistic way of how these layers are interacting or propagating back and forth. And then the interdisciplinary inclusive assessment of ecosystem service flow that utilizes traditional ecological knowledge, which is really place-based, plus Western ecological knowledge that is tested and widely applicable would complement each other. So I think the ecosystem service flow model is the platform that makes the TEK and WAK to coexist. So I really think it would be useful. So in the future, if we use the ecosystem service model as a management tool, obviously it's gonna be complicated. It's not easy as like one single like model applications. Like we need to pay attention to process of our product. The process of applying the ecosystem flow model takes more time, and if you take your time, you would have precise model. So the framework of power and access of ecosystem service is another thing. The community that you're working in, who has power, who has access to which ecosystem service and which is being propagated or like lobbied is important to pay attention. and representing all the stakeholders and trade-offs and how scale-wise it differs is important. For example, in Darhat Valley, it's important to pay attention to herders' value in ecosystem services rather than like one or two fishermen that just comes in the summer and goes away. And the community level assessment, again, we need to talk to local people, we need to talk to local, authorities to see what is actually happening and where the flow is or where the flow is stuck or overflowing. That would be the important part of it. And then just to visit the triangle again, if you unpack the layers, the previous versions are the simplified versions, but these are the layers that you can add, and you can add more because as you unpack, you would have more of the layers and you'd see more interactions. So these are, maybe it looks really linear, and then that was on purpose, but you have to keep that in mind. All the layers are having interactions in between and cycling in there. So to wrap up, we need TEK, place-based knowledge. We also need the Western ecological knowledge. And then the ecosystem service flow model management would utilize both of it. That way the triangle, the sustainable ecosystem service flow is going to happen. So with that, Bernie Sanders is watching my cabin. I have a little research cabin in Darhad, and he's the one who's watching. I could not stay behind this man. So with that, I would just take questions. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, Badma. I think, Badma, you can stop sharing your screen and then, well, maybe you'll want to go back to your slides. It's just nice to see everybody out there.
I'll just stop sharing.
Yeah. We've got plenty of time for questions, and I'm happy to call on people. We've got a small group of people, so I invite you just to unmute yourself and start with a question. And if for some reason you prefer to chat it in, that's great. And if you need to be called on, you can roll over your participant label and raise your hand. Go ahead, Bill.
So Badma and I have had a lot of interesting conversations around this subject. And one thing that I keep prodding on is this idea of in the first flow model that you showed, Jones, it goes from ecosystem structure plus leading to natural capital plus human capital plus beneficiaries, eventually ending at some kind of product, right?
Yeah, I'll go to that slide.
In the second version you showed, scroll through these things. In the second version you showed,
sorry. Oh, this one.
Yeah, so this leads to a quantified service of some kind, some kind of realized service. And then as you move forward to where the woman was fishing, maybe if you weren't in presentation mode, you don't have to go through all the animations, but in the next slide after this, you
yeah, here.
And if you go all the way to the end of this animations, there it is, back up.
Yeah.
So if you, in this case, it's not, there is this realized products of goods and value, which is, a different kind of product in terms of benefits, benefits. So it separates goods and benefits from two different kinds of products, but it also loops back into some kind of policy or restoration. So in that case, it's a complete circle. Well, the other one implies sort of a one-way track towards something that ends. But this shows that, in a social ecological system, that you end up having to loop back and so you can do something to maintain the natural capital. So how do you reconcile these two different approaches?
So, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Your camera's off, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this like I said, I wanted to put it in a linear system just to make it easier to just first to see what it takes to come to the sustainable ecosystem services. But again, like you said, it's feeding back because those layers are interacting to each other. So, for example, when you're not including the herders in the decision making, people are reacting to it. Now I have this 160 interviews that people are like, we're not included in this decision making, and we're not being able to use the pasture on the rivers anymore. So that is like, pressurizing the decision makers. So yes, it does have the cycle, but the cycle is within the triangle. Like if I have more like axes that I can put on a 2D system, I would be able to like show the pyramid as like really like 3D or 5D, and you can see the interactions that's happening. So yeah, it does have this system, it's cycling, but I just need to find out how I can visualize it in those things. Any other questions?
Professor Dunkel has a question. Go ahead. Except for that you're on mute, so I can unmute you if you need.
Okay, I can unmute too.
There you
Okay, thank you, Badma. That was what I would like to do is to ask you to maybe give us some more examples or some really specific of how the blind spots ecosystem flow model can be brought out, can be described by Western ecological knowledge. I like this idea that we need both the traditional ecological knowledge and the Western ecological knowledge, and to say that there is something specific that WEK can contribute to this understanding, the kind of precision that WEK is really good at. Would there be another example or some examples to help us even better understand?
So there can be a lot of examples. Like for example, in like plants, like I said, there's lots of medicinal plants in the Darkhat Valley. So Mongolian herders have wealth of knowledge on each species. For example, the snow lotus, that they use it for different medications and stuff, but they don't necessarily know or the name the chemical compounds in it. So the Western ecological knowledge would pitch in at that point. You could get the sample of the plant and take it out, and then also, sample of the medications or the tinctures that they make, and then take it and check what compounds are in it, and actually does it work on which kind of diseases, and how it interacts with the specific physiology of the people who are from Darkhat, or is it going to fit to like other people who are like from different regions or races or upbringing. So those are the things that actually complement. And if you have like this parallel research of like snow lotus usage of Mongolians versus Western ecological like precise pathological or whatever the cell biology of the plant and compare it, and then it would make it even better. So that is like one little example. There's so many. Like there are some things that you cannot really agree, like the TK and WK are not agreeing on it. And it can be because just, the people who are using have different physiology, or they just do not react to the same thing in a different way. Same way. So that's why we need like more than one ride. In Mongolian saying, we need twin rides. So when one exhausts, the other one is ready. So the TK and WK are the twin rides for researchers or decision makers.
That's good. Thank you. That explains it really well.
Thank you.
A question, Padma?
Yeah.
What would you give advice to the natural resource managers here in Montana, given the knowledge base from Mongolia?
So I don't know if I could give advices, but if I have to be one of those people who would be contributing to like one of those management programs or things, I always feel like there's not much time that the researchers have to go and actually talk to the community and people who are actually living in the area. And I think it's because the scientific researchers or managers have not enough time, and also it's not allowed by their boss or budget or time or whatever. So I think it's important to establish that place-based knowledge base, and then apply your Western ecological knowledge or the specific knowledge, and see if those two makes it even stronger. So I think that is what, and then again, it takes a lot of time and efforts and people time and stuff, but in the long run, it's gonna cost less and it would be more efficient if it happens that way.
Super, thanks. That's
Thank you.
good advice.
I don't know if I could give advice to them, no.
Hi, Badam. I wondered how TEK and WEK were being sort of applied to the issue of climate change in Mongolia, and how much people are listening to TEK and sort of trying to understand what's happening there.
So one country that is not denying climate change is Mongolia, as far as I know. So anybody you would talk to, like 90-year-old man or 9-year-old kid in the school in Mongolia, and ask, do you think climate change is real? Everybody would say, yes, we see it because we are experiencing it. Because Mongolians do not have that big buffer in between the nature and the human, because there's no big barns that is heated and big bales of haze and stuff. Whatever happening in the nature affects directly to their animals or livelihood and everything. So I think the application of the Western ecological knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge towards the climate change is, again, we need to learn how to coexist. The WK and TK should coexist. So all this long time research or the observational knowledge of TK can work as a base to like the detailed Western ecological research. For example, like this 90-year-old man would say like, oh, the precipitation pattern is being changed. All the rain of the summer is falling between like within 12 hours, and it's washing down everything. So when you hear all those repeated observations of climate change, you can actually direct your Western ecological precise research to those points. So it would be more precise. And I feel like because of the COVID and everything, the countries are being quite nationalistic, especially when the vaccination and everything. I think the climate change is a global problem again, but the support system should be global, but the solutions has to be local. You should work with the local people with the support of global like efforts of reducing the CO2 and everything. So I think there are lots of potential of TEK and WK coexisting and complementing each other. Thank you.
I'll ask a follow-up to that. So, Badma, in your experience, what are the most important liaisons for that relationship? So I'm wondering, when you were describing the need to coordinate, kind of understanding local dimensions with global dimensions, I immediately began to wonder, so is there a role for the international community? Is there support within the country in Mongolia for that kind of connective work? What are the institutions that you have faith or hope in as important partners for local, local solutions and adaptation to climate change?
Yeah, that is the problem. I feel like everywhere in Mongolia, especially when it goes higher in the level of decision making, they're more like weighed into Western science and Western ecological knowledge. And also they have to be, because it's a small country, developing country, to receive the aids of international organizations, you have to meet the standards and all those. Like, you cannot just say like, oh, my grandpa said that, you have to have the numbers and all the statistics and precise base of it. And I think the bridge that would keep like these, organizations in coexistence is first researchers, us. And it's not always available to us, but we have to work more in position of bridging between the decision makers and the users or the stakeholders. And then I have an advisory board in Mongolia. So it's a local group of people that consists of women and men and decision makers and herders. So those 10 people who represent the Darhat Valley works with me as a liaison. So they are the people who guides me as a researcher and the decision makers and other stakeholders. So we look up to them when we decide which way we go or what we implement. And I think, again, this ecosystem service flow model, which all these interdisciplinary fields that's coming out, like place-based knowledge or community-based research, these organizations that implement this kind of interdisciplinary tools, which is flexible enough, would be like the closer bridge than like the precise, like those one CO2 research that is happening only on the ice core and stuff like that. Obviously, those precise knowledges are important, but we need more of those people who would be bridging interdisciplinary works. And the facilitation is important, which is really hard. I had to do quite a lot of facilitation in the community meetings and stuff, and it takes a whole team.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that brings us right up to the top of the hour. So this meeting will be recorded. And Badma, thank you so much. And everyone, wouldn't you unmute yourselves and give Badma a round of applause? And we'll hopefully see everybody here in 2 weeks for Chris Schiller's talk. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. Great job. Excellent.